The movie begins by showing a man named Derek Charles who is leaving for his office in one of the elite areas in the city center. Charles worked as an executive manager at one of the largest companies in the city. Besides having a promising career with very high pay, Charles has a very happy married life with his wife and his son. He always tries to be able to accompany his family during his busy life as an executive manager. However, that perfect life began to change when he met a female worker who was an intern at his office as an assistant manager. One day, a woman named Lisa came to Charles' office to fill the vacant assistant manager position at the company. When Lisa first saw Charles, she was fascinated by his charisma and character. On her first day on the job, Lisa realized that Charles was married and had a child. However, even though she already knew all that, she still desired to be with him. Even she secretly tried to find all Charles' personal information and background. A few days later, Lisa was assigned to be a temporary assistant for Charles because his previous assistant was sick. It was certainly a great opportunity for her to approach and spend more time with him. Lisa always tries to impress Charles with good work performance and maximum results. However, all of this was done so she could be accepted as a permanent worker at the company, and more freely to always be with Charles. Lisa's coquettish and seductive attitude slowly began to be realized by Charles, and he began to feel worried about the situation. In the evening, Charles told his wife about his work and activities while working in the office. When Charles's wife, Sharon, learns that Charles' new assistant is a beautiful woman who is still young and very intelligent, she begins to feel jealous. In addition, Charles also praised Lisa's performance, which was much better than his previous assistant, in front of Sharon. Charles, who realized the worry on Sharon's face, immediately convinced her that he would never turn to another woman because the only woman he loved was Sharon. But even though he had said all that, Sharon was still secretly worried about the closeness between her husband and Lisa. The next day, Sharon and her son decided to go to Charles' office because that day Sharon was having a day off from her work. When they arrived at Charles' office, Lisa suddenly approached them and introduced herself to Sharon. Lisa's courage to interrupt their togetherness made Sharon feel even more jealous and uncomfortable with her presence. Sharon also didn't welcome Lisa's introduction, making the situation even more awkward. After leaving Charles' room, Lisa seemed annoyed and jealous of Sharon even though she didn't deserve to be jealous. At that moment, it seemed that Lisa was increasingly determined to snatch Charles from Sharon without considering the fact that Sharon and Charles were married. Lisa secretly started looking into Charles' hobbies and favorite songs, so she had more reasons to get close to him. But even though she is trying hard to get to know Charles better, it seems he still doesn't show any interest in her. A few days later, Charles' male assistant, Patrick, finally returned to work after recovering for some time. Charles was happy and relieved to see Patrick back because it meant he didn't have to deal with Lisa anymore. However, it turns out that Charles' assumption is wrong. Lisa is still working in the same department as Charles because now she is replacing the assistant position from Charles' superior, which was previously filled by Mac. The next day at lunchtime, Charles saw Lisa crying in the pantry alone. Charles, who felt sympathy, tried to calm her and asked what problems she was facing. Lisa confessed that her relationship with her boyfriend had just ended, and she still wasn't ready for it. Hearing this, Charles tried to comfort her and gave her some advice. Seeing the attention Charles gave, Lisa became happy and could smile again with relief. Shortly after Lisa left the pantry, one of Charles' male co-workers, Ben, approached Charles and warned him to be careful because his close relationship with Lisa could cause a scandal. But Charles immediately denied it and said he had no special relationship with her. Charles said that he only thought of Lisa as his co-worker and that what Ben saw earlier was a misunderstanding. When Charles attends a party held by the company at a hotel, Lisa returns to Charles and tries to approach him. She realized that he was already half drunk, and she intended to use the opportunity to tease him. Although Charles was initially tempted by the beauty of Lisa's body, he immediately came to his sense when he remembered his family waiting at home. When Charles was washing his face in the bathroom, Lisa suddenly appeared and trapped him in one of the toilet cubicles. The incident almost got Charles into trouble because one of his co-workers who came to the bathroom also saw the incident. Charles, who didn't want to get involved in a scandal, immediately rushed out of the bathroom and left Lisa behind. Since that night, Charles has become more careful around Lisa and tries to stay away from her. However, he couldn't do much because he was still in the same department as her. When Charles was about to come home from work in the afternoon, Lisa returned to him in his car. She seems to be getting out of control because she is still trying to seduce Charles even though he has rejected her openly. Even when Charles kicked Lisa out of his car, she actually felt offended and scolded him for it. The next day, Charles tried to report Lisa's actions to his company leadership because what she did interfere with his work. However, it turned out that Lisa was no longer working at the company on the same day because her work contract was not renewed. Charles was relieved to hear the news because he was free from the possessive woman who had always interfered with his life so far. Unfortunately, Charles' suspicions about Lisa were again proven wrong because she still continued to appear in his life. Lisa often sends sexy photos to Charles' email address and keeps track of all his activities. That's why, when Charles was on a business trip out of town, Lisa suddenly came to the same place where he worked. That night, when Charles was having a meeting at a hotel with his client, Lisa secretly put sleeping pills in his drink. At midnight, when Charles was about to return to his room, he began to feel a reaction from the sleeping pills that Lisa had given him earlier. Lisa, knowing this, used the opportunity to seduce Charles and sleep with him. The next day, after Charles finished the meeting, Lisa again approached him and said that she really enjoyed their time together last night. Hearing this, Charles looked surprised because he felt he had never done anything with Lisa last night. That night, when Charles returned to his room, he was again surprised by Lisa lying helplessly in his room. Apparently, she did not accept Charles' refusal, so she was determined to drink a bottle of sleeping pills in a high enough dose. Charles, who panicked, immediately called an ambulance without considering the possibility that the incident might cause a scandal for him. After the ambulance arrived, Charles took Lisa to the hospital so that she could get some treatment. On the other hand, Sharon got a message from one of Charles' co-workers that Charles was going to the hospital, so she rushed after her husband. Shortly after Sharon arrived at the hospital, a female police officer called Charles to ask a few questions about Lisa's case. He explained everything to the police officer and assured her that from the start, it was Lisa who tried to tempt him to do unexpected things. But the female police officer didn't seem to believe Charles because when Lisa was found in his room, she was already naked and unconscious. Not only that, after Sharon heard an explanation from the police officers, she began to suspect that her husband had an affair with Lisa. As a result of that incident, a fight between Sharon and Charles was unavoidable. The next day, the police visited Lisa to ask what had happened at the time of the incident. She began acting as if she had been hurt by Charles and lied to the police officers by saying she had a special relationship with him. Even Lisa also said that Charles had promised to marry her after he divorced Sharon. Lisa then confessed that she tried to end her life because Charles had broken the promise. After receiving information from Lisa, the police officers again interrogated Charles. Charles, who felt cornered by the testimony given by Lisa, intended to sue Lisa and imprison her. But the police officer informed him that she had already left for Los Angeles. After Charles was separated from Sharon for 3 months, he tried to mend his relationship with Sharon by inviting her to have dinner together. Sharon, who actually still loves Charles, decides to accept the invitation and gives him a second chance. In the evening, Charles and Sharon have dinner at a fancy restaurant while their child is entrusted to a nanny named Samantha. Unbeknownst to them, Lisa secretly came to their house and claimed to be one of Sharon's best friends named Kathy. At first, Samantha had doubts about Lisa's words, but after Lisa pretended to get a call from Sharon, Samantha allowed her to enter the house. Back to Sharon and Charles. They decided to get back together after Charles convinced Sharon that he had never had an affair. When Sharon and Charles arrived home, they were shocked by the news that their son Kyle had disappeared. Apparently, Lisa deliberately infiltrated their house to kidnap Kyle by lying to Samantha that she was ordered by Sharon to pick him up. When Charles was about to drive the car to look for Kyle elsewhere, he found his son already in the car's backseat. After the incident, Sharon and Charles reported this incident to the police, so Lisa could be arrested immediately. The police finally realized that all this time, what Charles had said about Lisa had been proven true, and they promised to investigate this case thoroughly. The police began to hire several security guards and installed several CCTVs to ensure security at Sharon's house. A few days passed. Charles and Sharon, who had returned together, began to carry out their activities as usual. Charles left for his office while Sharon took care of all the housework and looked after Kyle. That day, Sharon told Charles that she would visit her parents, who had been living out of town for some time. After Sharon entrusted Kyle to her older sister, she went to her parents' house. Thanks to Ben's help, Lisa finds out that Charles will be home alone tonight, so she intends to infiltrate his house. On the other hand, Sharon, who had not gone too far from home, suddenly remembered that she had forgotten to turn on the alarm system in their house. She immediately turned around and returned home to activate the alarm system so no intruders could enter their house. But unfortunately, Lisa had already entered Charles and Sharon's room, as if she was ready to welcome Charles. After Sharon realized that Lisa had sneaked into her house, she immediately caught Lisa and called the police. But before Sharon could say anything, Lisa had already pushed her under the floor. A fight between Lisa and Sharon began and was fierce until finally, Lisa accidentally fell to the ground floor and was hit by an iron lamp. Shortly after, Charles received word from the police station that Sharon had tried to contact the police but did not say any emergency situation. Hearing this, he felt Sharon was in danger, so he rushed back to his house with several police officers. After knowing that Sharon was fine, Charles immediately hugged her tightly. Meanwhile, other police officers began to secure Lisa's lifeless body for examination. Since Lisa's death, Charles and Sharon have continued their harmonious and happy lives without being haunted by Lisa's obsessive presence that has ruined their household. The end. The moral that can be learned from this movie is that destroying the happiness of others for our own sake will only put us in greater suffering.